From Edgar Currit's short story called Good Intentions. He starts out, "There was a thick envelope waiting in my mailbox. I opened it, counted the dough, and there was a note with the name of the mark, a passport photo, and a place where I could find him. I cursed. I don't know why I'm a pro, and a pro isn't supposed to do that, but it just came out. I didn't have to read the name. I recognized the guy in the picture. Grace, Patrick Grace, Nobel Prize laureate, a good man, the only good guy I've ever known. When it came to good men, there was probably nobody in the world who could match him. I only met Patrick Grace once. It was in an orphanage in Atlanta. Like animals, they treated us. All year long, we wallowed in filth. They hardly fed us, and if anyone so much as opened his mouth, they would let us have the belt. Lots of times, you'd get the belt, and they wouldn't even bother opening the buckle. When Grace arrived, they made sure to get us cleaned up. That place and the place they called an orphanage. Before he came, the director gave us a briefing. Anyone who blabbered would be in for it later. And we'd all had our share of that medicine, enough to know the director meant business. When Grace entered our rooms, we were silent as mice. He tried talking to us, but we really didn't answer. Each boy got a present, said thank you, and hurried back to his bed. I got a dartboard. I said thank you, and he reached for my face. I cringed. Thought he was going to hit me. Grace ran his hand over my hair gently. Without a word, he lifted my shirt. In those days, I used to shoot my mouth off a lot. Grace figured that out by the condition of my back. He didn't say anything at first. He just said the name of Jesus a few times. Finally, he let go of my shirt and he hugged me. While he was hugging me, he promised that nobody would ever hit me again. Needless to say, I didn't believe him. People just don't act that nice without any good reason. I figured this was some kind of a trick. He'd be slipping off his belt any minute and letting me have it. The whole time he was hugging me, I just wanted him to go. He went. And that same evening, we got a new director, a whole new staff. From that time on, nobody ever hit me again. Except that guy I wiped out in Jacksonville. I did that one pro bono. Nobody has ever lifted a finger on me. I never saw Patrick Grace again, but I read about him a lot in the papers, about all the people he helped, all the good things he did. He was a good man. I guess there was no finer man anywhere. The only man I owed a favor on the face of this whole ugly planet, and in 2 hours, I was to be meeting him. In 2 hours, I was supposed to be putting a bullet through his head. I'm 31. I've had 29 contracts since I started. 26 of them I completed in one go. I never tried to understand the people I kill. Never tried to understand why. Business is business, and like I said, I'm a pro. I've got a good reputation in a profession like mine. A good reputation, that's all that counts. You don't exactly place an ad in the paper or offer special rates to people with the right credit card. The only thing that keeps you in business is that people know they can count on you to get the job done. I've made it a policy never, it's a prop. I've made it a policy never to back out of a contract. Anyone who checks my record will find nothing but satisfied customers. That is, satisfied customers and stiffs. I rented a room facing the street, right opposite the cafe. Told the owner that the rest of my belongings would be arriving on Monday, and I paid him 2 months' rent right up front. There was a half hour to kill. Before the time I figured he would get there, I assembled the gun, zeroed in the infrared sight, 26 minutes left. I lit a cigarette. I was trying not to think about anything. I finished the cigarette and I flicked it I flicked what was left of it into the corner of the room. Who'd want to kill a person like that? Only an animal or a complete wacko. I know Grace. He hugged me when I was just a kid. But business is business. Once you let your feelings through, you're finished. The carpet in the corner began to smolder. I got up from the bed and stomped out the butt. Another 18 minutes. 18 minutes and it would be over. I tried thinking about football, Dan Marino, a girl I met on 42nd Street. I tried not to think about anything. He was right on time. I recognized him from behind, that bouncy walk and that shoulder-length hair. He took a seat at one of the tables outside in the best-lit spot. He was facing me head-on. The angle was perfect, medium range. I could take this shot blindfolded. The red dot showed on the side of his head, a little too far to the left. I corrected to the right, till it was dead center. I held my breath. Just then, an old man wandered by, carrying all his possessions in a couple of bags. Typical homeless. The city's full of them. Right outside the cafe, one of the handles snapped. The bag fell to the ground. All his junk just spilled out. I saw Grace's body stiffen for a second with a kind of a spasm. The corner of his mouth went right up, and he got up right away to help. He knelt down on the sidewalk, gathering up the newspapers, the empty cans, putting them back in the bag. The sight stayed fixed on him. He was mine now. The red dot was floating in the middle of his forehead like a fluorescent Indian caste mark. That face was mine, and when he smiled at the old man, he glowed like the paintings of saints on the church walls. I stopped looking through the sights and took a good look at my finger. It was hovering over the trigger guard, straight out, nearly frozen. I couldn't go through with it. It wasn't going to happen. No point in fooling myself. It simply wasn't going to happen. I thumbed the safety. I eased back on the bolt. The bullet slid from the chamber. I headed down towards the cafe and put my gun in its case. It wasn't a gun anymore, just 5 harmless parts. I sat down at Grace's table facing him and ordered a coffee. He recognized me at once. The last time he saw me, I was 11. I was only a kid, but he had no trouble remembering me. He even remembered my name. I put the envelope with the money on the table and told him that somebody out there had hired me to kill him. I tried to play it cool and pretend like I never even considered going through with it. Grace smiled, and he said that he knew. He was the one who sent me the money in the envelope. That he wanted to die. I got to admit it, even me. The answer caught me off guard. I stammered, asked why. Did he have some malignant disease? A disease, he laughed. I guess you could say that. There was that little spasm again in the corner of his mouth, the one I'd seen through the window. And he started to talk. He said, ever since I was a child, I've had this disease. The symptoms are clear, but nobody ever tried treating it. I'd give my toys to the other kids. I never lied. I never stole. I was never even tempted to hit back in school fights. I was always sure to turn the other cheek. My compulsive good-heartedness just seemed to get worse over the years. Nobody was willing to do anything about it. If, say, I had been compulsively bad, they'd have taken me to a shrink or something right away. They'd have tried to stop it. But when you're good, it suits people in society to keep getting what they need in return for a shriek of delight and a few compliments. And it just kept getting worse. I've reached a point where I can't even eat without stopping after every bite to find someone hungrier than I to finish my meal. At night, I can't fall asleep. How can a person even consider sleeping when you live in New York City, and but 60 feet away is a person shivering on a park bench while you're in a warm house? That spasm was back in the corner of his mouth. His whole body seemed to shake. I can't go on this way. No sleep, no food, no love. Who has time for love when there's so much misery around? It's a nightmare. Try to see it from my point of view. I never asked to be this way. It's like a dybbuk, except that instead of a dybbuk, Your body's possessed by an angel, damn it. If it were a devil, someone would have tried to finish me off a long time ago. But this? Grace gave a short sigh and closed his eyes. Listen, he went on, all this money, take it. Find yourself a position on some balcony or on a rooftop and get this over with. I can't do it on my own, after all. It gets harder and harder every day, even just sending you the money. Having this conversation, he mopped his forehead. It's very hard. It's very hard on me. I'm not sure that I'll have what it takes to do it again. Please just pick a spot on one of the rooftops and do it. I'm begging you. I looked at him, his tormented face, like that of Jesus on the cross, like Jesus. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I'm always armed with the right sentence, whether it's for the father confessor, for a girl at the bar, or that federal agent. But with him, I was a scared little kid back at the orphanage, cringing with every unexpected move. He was the good man. I'd never be able to waste him. No point in trying. My finger wouldn't wrap itself around the trigger. Sorry, Mr. Grace, I whispered after a while. You just can't kill me, he said. He smiled. It's okay. You're not the first one, you know. 2 other guys have returned the same envelope before you. I guess it's part of the curse. It's just that with you, the orphanage and all that, he shrugged. Me getting weaker every day, somehow I hoped you could return the favor. Sorry, Mr. Grace, I whispered. I had tears in my eyes. I wish I could. Don't feel bad, he said. I understand, no harm done. Leave it. He chuckled when he saw me try and pick up the tab. Coffee's on me, I insist. It has to be on me. It's like a disease. I pushed a crumpled bill back in my pocket. Then I thanked him and walked away after I'd taken a few steps. He called me. I had forgotten the gun. I went back getting it, cursing to myself quietly. I felt like a blank rookie. 3 days later in Dallas, I shot some senator. It was a tricky one. 200 yards away, half a view, awful side wind. He was dead before he hit the floor. On that point, again, we're done with the story. Again, that struck me deeply on quite a few levels. We're all here to learn from each other as we continue learning from the Lord's inspired word. There's many out there who would not have any kind of a kind word for any of us in this effort, but we're driven to find truth. I hope and pray that we are learning actually how to better live that truth. From day one, there's always been those who look at Christianity as, shall we say, a disease. As Glenn Hill spoke of just a couple hours ago, that disease is rampant, and we've got to guard against it. Of course, with names like hyper-preterism, fulfilled eschatology, preterism, consistent Christianity, orthodox preterism, classical preterism, moderate preterism, consistent preterism, covenant eschatology. They all sound very serious, quite deadly. But the funny thing is that if you're going to say some other names, how about Mark, Matthew, Luke, Peter, Paul, Barnabas, perhaps Apollos, James, Jude. I can just keep going, but you've got the drill. Names that we all know and respect and love. But to be consistent, they too suffer from a common, deadly condition. They all spoke quite a bit of heresy. Let's just touch on a very few. There's lots there. This generation shall not pass away until all these things take place. The kingdom of God is at hand. What will the owner of the vineyard do? He will come and destroy the vine growers, and he will give the vineyards to others. They understood that he spoke in a parable against them. This generation will not pass away until all these things take place. The axe is already laid at the root of the trees. You shall not finish going through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man returns. Do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, because the time is near. I say, he spoke these words to Caiaphas, the chief priest, the scribes, the elders, the entire Sanhedrin. From now on, you will be seeing the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. At that, Caiaphas tore his clothes, and everyone in that room agreed to put him to death. They knew exactly what he was saying and who he was saying it to. Jesus was killed for, call it whatever you want, believing in fulfilled eschatology. They knew it, and that's why they put him to death. I'm gonna finish up with just a little bit here. I'm going to paraphrase a bit from Matthew, Mark, and Luke. I'm going to tell you the truth. Some of you sitting here today, right now, will not die before seeing me return. Okay, I'm going to back up. So now, don't wait 2,000 years.